Hello, my beautiful bookish people. It is Femathon day 3, I think. Today's Wednesday.
Yeah.
Today's Wednesday. I just worked on editing together days 1 and 2, which I've kind of been doing each day so that it doesn't get overwhelming, and that seems to be working out pretty well. Anyways, books 1 through 5 are on that vlog, and today, which is March 3rd, the Instagram prompt is to recreate a cover. So that's what I'm gonna do right now. So what do you think? I mean, I think it's pretty cute. Okay, I need to back up a second. So when we were coming up with the Femathon logos and stuff, I asked Faye what she wanted, and she's like, make it unapologetically girly. And I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna get a palette of like pinks and purples together. And like, to me, I'm like a fairly neutral person and I consider myself genderqueer. So like occasionally I want all of the pinks and purples, but a lot of the time I find it garish, even though I know that a lot of other people really, really like it. So I was like, I'm gonna make something that looks so garish to me, it's gonna be great. And then I sent it back to Faye and she's like, this is awesome. I'm like, great, this is lovely. So I kind of kept with that theme for this one. I really like The Near Witch by V.E. Schwab because it's a modern fairy tale, and it kind of has that brevity to it that a lot of fairy tales have, and it's kind of spooky. You get to see the relationship of the main character as she tries to take care of her family and all the children in the village, because all the children in the village of Near start to go missing, and she has to figure out why. And then she goes on an adventure to find them, along with the new person who shows up in town, who starts to get blamed for it. So I just thought, you know what? We're on the theme of pink and purples. I'm gonna make a pink and purple cover, and that's what happened. Now I have to figure out what else I'm going to do today. I've been getting a lot of comments back on my 2020 reading stats video, and everybody is loving the stats, and that video is actually doing pretty well for me. So I guess I need to go put together the graphs for January and February of 2021, because I did part of the formulas for them last night, so they're in my master spreadsheet, but I don't have visuals for them yet. So I guess I better get on that. It took me a hot second to figure out how to make the graphs again, because it's been so long since I've actually edited the graphs on these sheets, but I finally figured it out. So here's a sneak preview. As you can see, I have not fixed everything, and I don't know that I ever will, but these are some graphs. And then we have February. I just finished writing my January wrap-up script/guide thingamajig. I probably need to turn this into a blog post too, but I'm losing daylight, and I typically film using the daylight. Like, what time is it?
I don't even know what time it is.
It's well after 5:30, and the sun's been setting around 6-ish, so that's not really enough time for me to set up and film this, so I guess I'll write that to do tomorrow or whenever I feel good enough to set up my good camera. And now I kinda want to make some spaghetti and meatballs. Well, hello there. It's been a few days, so I thought that maybe I would give a dramatic reenactment of what you missed. Ow! Oh no! Ooh, yay! Ow! So that's how my week's been going. I guess I should kind of talk about what I've been reading in the meanwhile, because I did get to read a little bit more. I finished The Girl Who Speaks Bear, and I may need to make a dedicated review for this book too, because I'm beginning to think that Sophie Anderson might be an auto-buy author for me. If you don't know anything about this story, it is a whimsical tale built off of Russian folktale mixed with its own little story, and the main character in this, and her name is Yanka, and she's known in her village as Yanka the bear because she's strong as a bear. And then one day she falls down and she grows bear legs, and she keeps wondering why the forest keeps calling to her so much. And her little household pet slash friend, her friendly little weasel, starts talking to her one day, and she goes, "Oh, I can understand you now." And he goes, "Yeah, you finally learned to listen." And then they go on an adventure to figure out why she's like this, and ultimately go and handle a dragon that's been a problem for a while. What I really liked about this story is how it handles asking for help, found family, and just overall forming good, solid relationships, and why you want to form those solid relationships. And I really, really appreciated it. This is a lovely story. I've never seen anything intertwine folk tales with a main storyline like this before, because every now and again it'll break out into "and once upon a time," and it'll do that for a couple pages, and then it'll get tied back in with the main storyline. It's so neat. Everybody needs to read this book. And I also read the Manga Classics adaptation of The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne, and this is a book that I've actually read the original for, and I can say that this is a pretty darn good retelling and adaptation. Well, is it a retelling or an adaptation? I'm more inclined to say adaptation than retelling, because retellings, I feel like, change the main story. So, adaptation. Manga adaptation. I had to read the original in high school as part of my classic American lit work, and I couldn't remember why I hated this book so much, other than I generally don't care much for stories involving, you know, heavy Protestantism and whatnot. But I actually really like where the story goes in the beginning, but the ending is what gets me every time. I hate it because they started to go somewhere really cool with it, and then they're like, oh no, she just kind of accepts it and moves on and pays her penance and whatever, because she wears an A for adultery. Hester Prynne gets sent over on a boat without her husband to the new world, the new colonies. I think she ends up in, isn't it Boston or something? Anyways, 1600s settlement America, and yeah, be prepared for some of that language. Just saying. And she gets there and she's living her life, and then all of a sudden she becomes pregnant, and all the settlers in her little area know that she's married and that her husband isn't here yet, and they're like, oh, well, you definitely committed adultery, so we're going to sentence you to jail, and from now on, when you live here, you have to wear this big red A on your chest so that everyone knows that you did wrong, and this is how you must pay your penance to God and your people. And she has this child, and the child cuts through all the BS and is like, well, this is dumb. Why are you wearing this A? And the mother struggles to tell the child why, and you get to see the story of revenge, because eventually her husband does show up, and she never rats on who she committed adultery with, so her husband kind of figures it out and then exacts his own revenge. And I mean, I can't do much more than that without getting into spoilers, but it's a really interesting take on really, really, really early versions of feminism, because, you know, Nathaniel Hawthorne opens up and he's like, oh, I found this story about this woman back in ye old days, and we were way too hard on her, and this is ridiculous that these people judged her so harshly when they should have been judging her by the rest of her actions instead of, you know, ignoring her for forever. They still go and buy from her. They still support her monetarily, but they're really mean to her verbally. But she just keeps serving the community and is a goodwill doer and stuff. Puritans, man. Puritans.
So,
100% enjoy the manga retelling more than the original. I almost thought about going and rereading the original, but I hate the way that the story ends. And then I finally kind of felt good for one day, and it happened to have been the day that we did our live stream, and I read Sense and Sensibility, the manga classics adaptation, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't know whether I'm an Eleanor or whether I'm what's her, Marianne? I don't do names. Anyways, I don't know which of the two sisters I like more, because I'd probably be the girl with the M's name in reality if I were put back here, but also I really appreciate Eleanor's character as well, and how this book really just kind of shows you that it doesn't matter if you do everything the right way or everything the wrong way. Like, you need to stop concentrating on the way you actually do the thing and just do the thing, because you're probably going to get to the same result in the end anyways. So basically, this is an old romance story of girl falls in love with guy, does everything wrong with how their courtship's supposed to go, guy basically cheats on her and ignores her and then marries somebody else, and crushes her, and sister supports her through all this, also has romantic engagements with a man but does everything the right way, but then it kind of doesn't work out, and then it does work out, and then younger sister also gets married in the end, and it's a fun love story journey. So if you're looking for something along those lines, definitely pick it up. And Faye from Books and Chocoholic can probably do a way better job at explaining this book than I can, because she basically has it memorized, and this is her favorite book. So after reading the Manga Classics adaptation and really enjoying it, I think I'm also picking up the original. And the other book that I've read in the meanwhile is a digital copy of the Lumberjanes Volume 11. If you don't know anything about the Lumberjanes series, it's basically Girl Scouts, but more modern day and queer, and also fae, because it's set in the forest where time kind of slows down and a lot of magical shenanigans happen. So if you're looking for something that crosses out Girl Scouts and types in hardcore lady types and has a bunch of different representation, I totally recommend checking it out. It's a fun series. I think the age group that's recommended is like 9 to 12 or something in through there. But it's a really fun graphic novel series. Some of the issues are better than others, in my opinion, just depending on where the story goes, and you do need to have kept up with the series to understand what's going on in Volume 11, but I really enjoyed this issue. And now I am reading a digital copy of When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole, and I'm gonna be honest, I came really close to DNFing this one too. If it wasn't for everybody else on Booktube being like, oh, this gets so creepy and so good, because the opening of it is very much not that of a thriller. You kind of just get thrown into the characters and some character development and their backstories and why they're there, which obviously is important when you're telling a story, but like there's no element of there's this big creepy spooky thing going on in the background until you get about 40% of the way into it, which is where I am now, and it's starting to pick up. So I'm glad that other people have said that about the 40% mark is where it started to pick up, because I probably would have stopped at like 20%, because I'm like, okay, you're telling me a contemporary story, but what I wanted right now was a thriller, and all I'm getting is contemporary. So if you're also struggling with that like I was, keep reading, because it does get good. And hopefully I'll really like the way it turns out. So I'm gonna go get back to reading that now. So I finished When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. The first 40% of the book, I'm like, okay, this is a contemporary mixed with romance. I came here for horror. I'm not sure I want to continue. From like 40% to 70-ish%, it was getting really good at like 67%. I'm like, holy cow, what? And then from like 70 to 80%, I'm like, all right, I can get on this train. Where is this going? And then somewhere around the 80-ish or 90% to the end of the book, it was just way unrealistic for me. And I really did not care for the ending and how it wrapped up, because it felt like some Deus Ex Machina kind of stuff, which I have to be in a very rare mood for Deus Ex Machina to work for me. So, like, the book in and of itself, it does a really good job of discussing racism and classism, and it really makes you think about those things. So if you want a contemporary / romance that makes you think about classism and racism, this would be a great book. And like, even as a horror book, like, it got into it, and it got really cool because it was realistic to a degree up until the very, very end, because the events in this book are somewhat loosely based on historical context of things that have happened in the US. So what's happening is not inconceivable. So that was really cool. And because it's written like a contemporary and you have that aspect where what's creepy that's going on is based on history, it works in that regard. But what doesn't work is that they set it in Brooklyn. Like, I get if you want to use it just as like a stepping stone for, it's a predominantly Black neighborhood. We have like 2 brown people of unknown origin. Nobody is really speaking many languages except for like one person who speaks their own language. And then there's no subway. Like, the character just takes Uber instead of the subway, which is really weird. And then also, there are no Jewish people in Brooklyn. Why are there no Jewish people in Brooklyn? That was weird. So, yeah. I mean, if this book had been set in like some random rural town in America, it totally would have worked because, you know, part of the premise is set on like taking an Uber and weird things happening, or like it being a just Black neighborhood and white people gentrification bullshit happening, and, you know, having that very in-group, out-group look on things, which very much can happen, especially in small towns. But, and like, I get that they're going for like super rich people moving in and doing gentrification, and that matches with New York really well because that's where a lot of super duper ultra rich people live. But it just didn't feel like New York, which was a weird take. But if you can get past the setting being really, really strange and just like put it somewhere else in your mind that isn't New York, then it can be pretty cool. I just really disliked the ending, and I don't understand part of the romance. Part of that's a me thing, though, because I'm not a super duper romancy person just in general. Like, some of the choices that were made, I'm like, interesting. I can see some people doing that, but also, what? For me, because I don't really have that much of a drive since I've been on medication, so... But, I mean, I don't know. I'm not gonna knock it. If you want to do stuff that way, you totally can. It's just, it makes my brain go, huh? So, yeah. I think, like, I'm not gonna put a public-facing rating on this on Goodreads because I literally don't know what to do with this, but in my personal collection, because I never want to reread that ever again, and, like, I just really didn't like how it turned out in the end. So that makes me kind of hate that I finished reading it, but also I'm glad that I read it because it has some really powerful quotes on the classism and racism front. Like, really powerful quotes. So in that respect, I am glad I read it. So maybe a 2.5 because I'm kind of mad, but also I'm kind of glad, but also I'm never going to reread this. And that's the next 5 books, so I think I'm gonna cut the vlog here, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!